Chapter 2, The Sugar Bush. The road up to the sugar woods had been broken out by Tilly and Tossie, the Belgian farm team, over a week ago when Dad first went up to check on the sugar house and on the cords of hardwood piled in the shed behind it. Beside it. That was one sentence. Okay. Now, the big maple sledge carrying the evaporator and the two sap storage tanks squeaked ahead and through the trees while Windyfoot hauled the small sledge. Sitting on their shoelaces on Windy's sledge, Betsy and Johnny, sitting on their snowshoes, on Windy's sledge, Betsy and Johnny rode behind the load of bright buckets, and Toby climbed up beside them, holding the reins. "Pull, Windy!" he called. The Shetland pony tossed his black mane, leaned forward in the harness. His dappled gray shoulders were white with storm, and he thrust his black hooves carefully into the steep snow of the road. Toby promised himself that tonight he'd draw a charcoal sketch of Windy and the sledge. Then, when he had time, maybe he could do a pastel picture from the sketch with the box of pastels that Mom had given him for Christmas. "Yahoo!" he shouted into the sky simply because he was feeling wonderful and got his eyes full of cool flakes. "Who are you yelling at, Toby?" Johnny asked, claiming the clean flour bag full of maple sprouts in his mittened fists. "Huh? Who?" "The first crow," said Toby carelessly, because it was the first thing that popped into his head. But at that exact moment, there was a wild caw above the trees. "Whoa, Windy!" he said in amazement. The three children lifted their faces to the treetops. Over the silence of the woods, over the bare boughs of the maples, there came a steady rushing sound. Toby held his breath, flapping north. The crow called again, and a great flock followed him in a marvelous pattern of black beating wings, aiming across the white hills through the northeast wind and the driving snow. Toby looked at Betsy and Johnny. They were both standing up, gazing northward, their mouths open, their eyes shining. He took a deep breath. "Birds," said Betsy in an odd voice. "Millions." "Crows," corrected Johnny. "Thousands. Didn't you hear him caw? I wish I was a crow." "I am a crow. Caw, 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 you hear me?" "I hear you all right," said Toby. "You'd both better sit down again. This road is getting bumpier." "Okay, Windy." "How many were there, Toby?" asked Betsy. "I never saw so many all at once before." "Hundreds. It's spring." Ahead, the big sledges had stopped too. He saw Dad flap the reins on Tilly and Tossie and start up once more. Then Dad turned and waved. Toby hollered, "Spring!" Dad yelled, "Sure sign." Cliff, who was plodding beside Tossie, shouted back, "Time for arbutus." I don't know what that means. Toby laughed. He thought Cliff was going to say sulfur and molasses, which he did at some time every spring. Nobody in the Clark family had ever taken sulfur, but they'd eaten plenty of molasses, especially in baked beans on Saturday nights all year round. "Maybe I can find some arbutus," Bets said, "but I guess the snow's too deep yet." "I guess so. Look out for this, thank you, ma'am. Easy, Windy, easy." When they reached the sugar house clearing, Toby pulled Windyfoot up behind this big sledge. Dad and Cliff were unloading the evaporator, the big shiny tin pan in which the sap would be boiled and turned into syrup. Bets and Johnny helped Toby carry loads of wood from the shed into the windowless, lantern-lit sugar house, and they stacked the logs neatly against the east wall. After Cliff had laid the two fires in the long, narrow brick furnace called the arch, Dad and Cliff placed the evaporator pan on top of the arch and fastened the pipes at the back of it to the sap storage tanks. Then Dad said, "Come on, kids. I'll get you started on the trees. We ought to have the first gathering this afternoon. When the sap comes in, keeps the fires nice and steady. Keep the fires nice and steady, Cliff." Immediately, Toby saw that Dad could have kicked himself for making that last remark. "Ugh," growled Cliff. "I never built a syrup fire before in my life, I suppose." "What do you think I am, a candy maker?" "Well, I got me a new pair of walking shoes from the catalog. I'm going north after them crows." "Oh, Cliff," said Dad quietly, I didn't mean it that way. Nobody can build a better syrup fire than you, and you know it. You can go off anytime you want to. We agreed to that years ago, but for gosh sakes, please teach Toby how to run this sugar house first." "I can't be everywhere at once." "You can go very fast, so it's almost the same as everywhere at once," piped Johnny staunchly from the shadows beside the piles of the new gallon cans. "Hush, Johnny," Betsy whispered. "Won't," said Johnny. "Oh, yes, you will," said Toby in a low voice. "This is important." Dad was looking hard at Cliff. "Can you wait long enough to teach Toby? Till Monday, maybe?" "Teach him? What, ain't yet 13? Cliff burst out. "Why, he'd have the syrup all cloudy and 2 shakes of a chipmunk's tail." "I probably would, too," said Toby feebly, feeling squelched. "But, oh golly, if Cliff went off wanderfooting right now, it would be terrible." "If we have a good run, we'll have to hire Blinkers Bolton to help out nights anyway," said Dad in a reasonable voice. "I know you don't like him, but he can keep the fires going while you test." Cliff's blue eyes and his lean, weathered face shot sparks. "Like him? Oh, that good-for-nothing critter don't know a maple spigot from his elbow and got no more sense about syrup than a catamount cat." "What's he know about density? What's he know about light amber? Can't even read the hydrometer. Hire him to keep the fires going if you want to, but if he touches one drop of my syrup, I'll throw him downhill." He paused a moment and then looked sheepish as he realized he had given himself away. "I ain't going anywhere," he muttered, "until I get dang good and ready." Dad grinned and held out his hand. "Thanks, Cliff. You're the boss. Bolton can tend the fires while you make the best syrup in Webster County, right?" "Yep," said Cliff, slowly gripping Dad's hand. "And I'll teach Toby if you think he's got enough sense." He glared at Toby, but the corner of his mouth twitched. "Sometimes I don't think he's got a mite." "Gosh," Toby said, relieved that Cliff wasn't going off right away. I'll try hard to learn." "Be a good idea," said Cliff gruffly. "Now, how the barnacles do you think I'm going to make syrup without any sap?" He turned away to light another lantern. Out in the trampled white yard, Dad told Toby softly, "Whew, I'm glad that first round is over. He just needed a little coaxing. He'll get so interested in the syrup that nothing could drag him away. At least that's the way it's always been. And I hope it'd be like that same way this year. I couldn't get along without it. Is it, is Blinkers Bolton any good, Dad?" "Not much, but he's all right to watch the fires and carry cans and bring in wood. But now, before we start tapping, I've got something for you kids. Something for us? Asked Johnny excitedly, hopping up and down. Bet stood on her left foot. What, Dad? You look like a stork, Johnny announced, giggling. Betsy threw a mitten full of snow at him. Dad went to the big sledge, came back with an ordinary sap bucket and a middle-sized bucket made from a 2-pound lard pail and a small bucket made from a tomato juice can. He handed the big bucket to Toby and the middle-sized one to Betsy and the little one to Johnny. Betsy and Johnny's bucket had homemade covers of tin. The children gazed at him with wonder. "We're just like the 3 bears," whispered Johnny. Dad grinned. "This way, lady and gentlemen, I have something to show you." He led them a short distance into the maples. "Toby, you see this half-grown tree with the largest bough going south?" "Yes, Dad, that's your tree. I'm giving you each a maple for your own, for keeps." "Oh, boy!" Toby gaped at the fine, stalwart tree in front of him, stared skyward into the delicate branches. "Dad," he gulped. "Gosh, thanks." "Where's mine?" demanded Johnny. "Where's my tree?" "Hold your horses," said Dad. "Any sap you fellows get from them, you may do as you please with. Drink it, or make syrup, or make sugar. Come here, Betsy, this one's yours. This young one with the biggest limb going west." Betsy's dark eyes were wide and delighted. "Oh, Dad, thank you." "And you, Johnny," Daddy told the little boy, "may have this sapling with the funny bough slanting east. East. Think you can each remember your own tree?" Johnny stumbled toward his sapling, flung tight arms around it, and hugged it. "Hello, tree. Hello, tree." He gurgled. He tried to shake it lovingly. "Don't you forget you belong to me." "This is grand, Dad," Toby said. "You bet we can remember them." "We'll tap 'em," said Dad. "And then, Toby, you'd better start working from here, east, along the slope. Get as far as you can by noontime. I'll work south up the hill." "Yes, sir." Toby watched happily as he swung off toward the big sledge where Tilly and Tossie stood waiting patiently in the leaning snow. Dad thought up the nicest things. What other father would have dreamed of giving his children maple trees for surprise presents? Toby's chest glowed steadily like the sugar house fires with love and admiration. He hurried to the small sledge for his bit and bit stock, paused to pat Wendy and brush the snow from the pony's forelock. Wendy whooshed and nuzzled his shoulder. "You're going to have some maple syrup for sure, Wendy," he promised. The pony whickered, stamping his right forefoot. "You wait, I'll give you a drink of the first sap from my tree." Toby, Bets, and Johnny each had a maple. Wendy brushed his nose back across Toby's cheek. Toby chuckled and trampled back to Betsy and Johnny. With the big and the middle-sized and the little buckets, when the big and the middle-sized and the little buckets were hanging from the spouts on the half-grown maple and the young maple and the sapling, the Clark children clambered onto the sledge, and Toby called to Wendyfoot. The pony started off eagerly across the clearing, while Johnny and Bets chattered hilariously about what they would do with their sap. "I'm going to ask Mom for some of those star molds," Betsy said, "and make little sugar stars, and send a box to Tish, and take a box to Miss Tony at school, and then I'll save the rest and eat them myself all year long." "Poof," cried Johnny in derision. "Like fun you will." "They won't last you all year long. Not the way you eat candy. They won't last you while you're making them, I bet. I bet you won't have enough to give away, even I bet you. I will too, maintained Betsy, her small jaw growing stubborn. When I make up my mind to do something, I do it. When I make up my mind not to do something, I don't do it either. So there. Ha ha, chortled Johnny, shaking the sack of spouts. What I'm going to do first, I'm going to drink one bucket of my sapling sap. And get a stomach ache, interposed Betsy. Johnny ignored the interruption. And then I'm going to boil all the rest down on the kitchen stove. And if I can reach until it's a golden syrup, and if I can't reach, I'll ask Mom to boil it for me. And then I'm going to get me a little something or another and fill it with my maple syrup and send it to Tish. What do you mean, something or another? I've got my own ideas, retorted Johnny, and I'm now going to tell you. So there, yourself. Fiddle-dee-dee, said Betsy airily. I'll bet you don't know what your idea is. You're just pretending. I am not. Well, whoa, said Toby. Hop down, kids. Here's where we start. Johnny, fill your pockets with spouts and follow me, and Betsy, you can manage the buckets all right. Bring two at a time if you can. All morning, in the gray-boughed maple woods, Toby carried his tapping tools from tree to rough-barked tree, carefully boring the small, up-slanting holes with his 3/8-inch bit. It wasn't easy to bore 2.5 inches through the tough, close-grained wood. After 50 trees, his right arm began to ache. When they had covered a good-sized section of the bush, he drove Windyfoot to the middle of the next section, and he and Bets and Johnny worked backward and forward from the sledge. Johnny plodded faithfully after him on the small, red-tasseled Canadian snowshoes Dad had brought him from a trip to Montreal a year ago. The little boy hung on to the bit handle sometimes and tried to help. It tried to help Toby turn it. But it was really more of a drag on the tool than a help. Never mind, Johnny. You have to reach too high. Thanks, just the same. Why can't you bore it lower so I can reach? Johnny's voice quivered. I'm beginning to get mad. That's what I am. Because, Toby explained, bending to hug the small, disappointed shoulders, the tap is supposed to be at the middle of a man's waist. Well, put it down to the middle of my waist. I'm a man. Toby agreed with him. You sure are, but honestly, Johnny, you don't know that if the snow drifted, the bucket would be clear out of sight in a snowbank at your stomach level. I suppose so, said Johnny glumly. Here's your spout. Betsy hung the gleaming pail on the little hooks under the spouts, covered the bucket so that the snow or rain or twigs or snicks of bark wouldn't get into the sap. Toby, I wish I were a maple tree, she said unexpectedly. You know what? Know what? She took a deep breath and visions tumbled out of her. Then I could give people maple syrup, and I could have red blossoms and buds, and I could have little pointed green leaves, and I could have big green shady leaves all summer, and then I could have red and yellow leaves in the fall, and I could be full of snow in the winter and sit down on my hill and take a rest. That, said Toby, keeping his face straight, you certainly could use, and you're out of breath now, just thinking about it. I don't care, she panted. I would like to be a maple. Uh-huh, said Toby, but we love you the way you are. He tugged gently at one of her pigtails and moved on to the next tall trunk. I wouldn't like to be a maple tree. Johnny was firm. People would bore holes into my middle. And then in the fall, all my pretty leaves would blow, blow, blow any which way, and I wouldn't be able to find them again. I would like to be a crow and fly any old place I like. Any old place I felt like it. Caw, caw, caw. Wouldn't I make a good crow? Marvelous, answered Toby. Spout, please, Johnny. I am not a whale, replied Johnny, handing him one. Then he hugged his stomach with laughter. Oh, Toby, he began to chant. I am not a whale, and I can't spout, and I can't blow the ocean out, but I can fly around in snow and caw as loud as any crows. That you can, my fine feathered brother, said Toby. He looked down. Johnny, are you getting tired? We've come quite a distance. Are your legs tired? He recognized the symptoms when Johnny's songs became more far-fetched than usual. It meant he was due for a nap. Well, said Johnny reluctantly, I guess I could stand sitting down for a few minutes. Gosh, Toby was repentant. I didn't realize I'd been rushing you so hard. I'm sorry, kids. Tell you what, I'll unharness Wendy, and then Bets, you and Johnny ride him bareback down home and warm up and rest. Nope, said Johnny. Yep, said Toby, and you take a nap, and Bets, when you've rested, ride Wendy back up so I can hitch him to the sledge again and keep going, all right? Sure, Toby, Betsy nodded vigorously. I'm not tired. You look it. A swell brother I am, running you both into snowbanks. I don't want a nap, protested Johnny furiously. Nap, 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 that's all I do. How many times do I have to tell you, he yawned. Clapped a mitten over his mouth and said with dignity, excuse me, please. His eyes defied Toby to come in on the yawn. Don't you dare, don't you dare. Then fill the wood box for Mom, said Toby, pretending indifference. It's probably empty by now, and make sure that Ribs and Poke have their dinners under the sink. Oh, yes, agreed Johnny. I am not tired, he stated, blinking angrily. Angrily. It's just that my snowshoes seem to be going off where I don't want them to. Toby unhitched Wendy from the sled and tied a couple of knots in the rein so they wouldn't drag. He brushed the snow from Wendy's back. Leave your snowshoes on the sledge, and I'll bring them down at noon. Up you go, Johnny. Drowsy and unprotesting for once, Johnny clung to Wendy's black mane. Did I help you? Toby carrying spouts. Did I? You certainly did. He hugged his little brother. Hold on tight. It's steep going down. He lifted Bets up behind Johnny. He gave her the reins. Wendy'll find his own way down where the going is best. So don't try and steer him too much. Oh, I know he will. Don't worry, Toby. I'll be right back. She gave him a shy smile and said, Giddy up, Wendy. He stood in the whirling flakes and watched Wendyfoot grow blurred and then become blotted out of sight. Swinging around, he set out for the next untapped tree, humming softly to the snow-hushed woods. He hoped Cliff would forget about his wanderfoot. Cliff had taught him a lot of songs about far-off places, but he never would say where he had learned them. Toby decided that Cliff must have had a great many attacks of wanderfoot when he was a young man, recalling a song Cliff had whooped to the last hayroad last summer. He shoved his red plain lumberman's cap back on his head and gazed through the trees. The song was called Hoosin' Johnny, and it was about a little black bull. Thinking of Chris, Betsy's boy calf. Toby changed the words a little to fit Chris and shouted it to the maple as he swung the bit handle round and round. If y'all recollect, in the photograph, he had was called a hand drill. This is before power drills were ever invented. Show you it again, and you'll see he just swings his hand around the other hand. It's a little pivot, and then the drill drills deeper into the tree. And he's singing. I wouldn't know the tune, but I'll say the words in a sing-songy voice, if I may. The little tan bull come down the meadow, Webster County, Webster County. The little tan bull come down the meadow, long time ago. First he paw and then he beller, Webster County, Webster County. First he paw and then he beller, long time ago. He wet his horn on a white oak sapling, Webster County, Webster County. He wet his horn on a white oak sapling, long time ago. He shake his tail, he jar the river, Webster County, Webster County. He shake his tail, he jar the river, long time ago. Maybe if Betsy didn't try to feed Chris anymore crazy things like apple pie, Chris would grow up to be a fine young bull and win a prize at the Webster County Fair next fall. It was possible. Toby knew that such an idea had never occurred to her. He suggested that ought to persuade her to eat her green gumdrops herself. A bough above his head, overladen, let a shower of icy snow slide down the back of his neck. I've had that happen. Right down the collar. Woo! 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 Can you feel it? Can you feel it? He looked up quick. Gasping, he laughed out loud into the flying white of the March sky. Ha 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 ha! The flying white of the March sky. Ha 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 ha! Next chapter 3. Tamale.